Okay, as always, I'd like to round out this module with a little bit of a discussion of both the case and your discussions about the case. So first of all, HubSpot, what they do is they make a customer relationship management software. So they are really in the business of understanding how to communicate with your customers. And so this is principally like a marketing and sales function. So they are really wanted to incorporate generative AI into what they do because your system has to make a lot of contacts and a lot of message, do a lot of social media posting, and so Gen AI provided kind of a nice opportunity to automate some of this. So some of the uh, some parts of the case that I want to okay, sorry, my mouse has disappeared. There it goes. Okay. So the interesting pieces and the important lessons of this case are really, they're just a few of them. Um, and the first one I want to mention is that for once, a large part of marketing and sales is threatened by technology. It has been the case that functions like accounting and operations have had customized software to automate a big piece of the decision making. This has been going on for a long time. Linear programming was invented after World War II, and that's used heavily in operations management. But marketing and sales has always been this personal, interactive kind of communication heavy function. And so now that Gen AI really is presenting an unusual threat to this area, unlike any technology that's come before. And so that's what makes this, marketing and sales. I chose a specific case having to do with marketing and sales. So these, there's different kind of problems here. They're unstructured and variable and people-centered. So again, this is something that traditional software was not able to handle as well before, but now we have that possibility. And they begin the case by going through some of the promising areas where Gen AI could actually help with this function. So, for example, new product and service ideas, creativity. Surprisingly enough, the LLMs are fairly creative. So you say, give me 20 ideas where we make these products right here. Give me 20 ideas of how I can enhance or make new products out of, similar kind of technology. And it can be quite creative, and so it can stimulate the creativity. Also, customer service via chatbots. I think this is generally, a lot of you have mentioned that this is a good entry point. Well, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Using Gen AI to design brand identity, logos, and and other kinds of visuals. And then, of course, extreme personalization in communications and social media. So detecting, particular aspects of your customer. An individual could be dealing with 500 customers, and so to be able to automate and personalize these messages is a real increase in efficiency. Another thing I found interesting in this case is they kind of systematized the different ways of using AI. I mean, we've been one recurring theme throughout is that a lot of people are really interested in this idea of, well, we want to augment rather than replace. We don't see AI, taking over entire jobs, but rather tasks, and even then it would just augment the human and not necessarily take over, and that there will always have to be some human judgment in this loop. And that's been kind of a recurring theme throughout. And so this is an interesting systematization of the various ways that you can incorporate generative AI. So they call them substitute. That is, AI becomes a complete substitute. So for example, a customer service representative could be substituted with a chatbot. Another way is to complement, that is to enhance what the service agent does. A lot of times, I don't know if so much now, but a few years ago, the way they started incorporating Gen AI into customer service was to have the AI produce the question and answers, and then have the person who is talking to the person read those answers. So the chatbot actually knew what it was doing, and maybe even had a deeper knowledge than the person did, and would give them the best answer to give to this person. But the person still was like that, that kind of gateway where they were the ones actually delivering the message to the customer. So there was that important empathy and that back and forth and that human element, but it was informed by the AI. And so this is an example of what they mean by complement. Then there's ghostwriter, and I think I've seen this quite a bit. There's you produce a document, but behind the scenes, it's unclear maybe how much AI actually wrote that versus you, and so that's kind of the ghostwriter is sort of like for longer documents or for emails, but you're using AI, not as a substitute, not as a complement, but as a kind of behind the scenes ghostwriter. And then, of course, there was the final option, was just to reject it altogether. And some people in their comments just said, look, this is just not going to work for me. And that's perfectly valid. So reject is one of the modes of dealing with AI. This study also gave, or rather this case gave a lot of interesting, cited some interesting studies about how people respond to automated customer service. And in general, it was interesting that how negative people are in dealing with machinery. So they said that 66% of chatbot conversations were rated 1 out of 5. So I mean normally you have 66% of 5s, so like on like some ride sharing or something like that. So people definitely have an aversion to these things, and they cited this study that said people would wait up to 13 minutes to talk to a person just because they didn't want to talk to the bot. And the specific problems that were cited, first of all, was a lack of empathy. Although it did mention that there was a certain chatbot where they did a study where the chatbot was actually delivering the medical diagnosis to the individual. And those patients actually felt that the chatbot was more sympathetic than the doctor was in delivering this kind of news, which, I don't know, maybe that says more about doctors than it does about technology. But so there was at least one example of a use case where the chatbots actually put people more at ease and they felt more confident and trusting. Now, I think one interesting thing to think about is, so in our NLP unit, we talked about sentiment analysis. And one way to head off this problem of lack of empathy is to do sentiment analysis on what the customer is posting. So if the customer enters a paragraph, if the sentiment analysis can detect, okay, this person is really getting angry, it could potentially use that as a way of automatically escalating, or maybe taking on a different tone, or just doing something to kind of alleviate that anger, so that it gives the appearance at least of more empathy. So there's a potential technological solution. Other problems include inaccuracy. That problem certainly will become less of a matter as AI gets more accurate. Bias and limited problem-solving ability. So those are, all of these problems are pretty solvable, if not now, then in the near future. So, and also even just the natural aversion, people wanting to talk to people, this could also go away too as we get more and more used to it. Believe it or not, in the 80s, people were hesitant about doing their banking at a teller. At an ATM, and they complained about not being able to talk to a teller. Well, nobody goes to a teller anymore. So people can change in terms of the technology that they're ready to use. And of course, it used to be considered a quite dangerous thing to submit your credit card online. But now people have realized it's become legitimate. They're more comfortable with it. We know what to do. We look for the secure sockets layer. We make sure that we have that. So things can change, and so it could be in the future that a lot of that bot aversion is going to go away. Okay. All right. So that's really what I kind of saw in this case. As far as the discussion goes, so as you're making your discussion, I just encourage you to, as much as you can, apply what is in the case to your specific work situation. Some of you are making good points, but it really helps if you can think about where you are, what you're working, what you're seeing. Many of you do a great job with this, and then think about like specifically what goes on in your work that can that speaks to the lessons of the case. Okay, so the general lesson I felt in looking at all the discussions this week is that AI adoption succeeds or fails based on whether employees trust the system. So a lot of discussion of trust. I think maybe looking at how much people didn't like the bots in the case got people thinking about, well, what are going to be, as I look around where I work and I talk to people, people generally just don't trust. That it's an issue of trust. I don't trust the output. I don't trust what happens to the work. I don't trust it enough to entrust my business to it. I don't trust what it's going to say to customers. So that lack of trust is going to be a big issue. And because there are risks, of course, and many people brought up risks. So somebody said that rapidly evolving AI systems may produce mistakes in real time, creating operational and reputational risks. So these models, if you adopt some certain kind of model, it could be updated and trained. It could learn from customers, and then all of a sudden it goes off in a completely different direction. Somebody else mentioned that small system inaccuracies, and this is a concept from engineering and also from computer science, that small system inaccuracies can compound quickly in real world operations. And this is something called operation drift, where you build a system to do a particular thing, and then for various reasons over time it kind of deviates and it starts doing something different. So maybe new data, new situations, even sometimes like hardware upgrades can actually change what a system does. So you get this drift, and so that is also a risk. Especially now that we're having, computers generate text for us. I mean, who knows what kind of new phrases it's going to come up with. So there's that fear. And then, of course, there's the human side, the human attitude. Blind trust in data-driven outputs could crowd out human judgment. So there's something called skills atrophy, where, the more you rely on these systems to do the work, over time, both the individual and the organization can lose certain competencies. So if you no longer do customer service, you could actually hollow out your whole customer service competency. Okay. All right, so some people mentioned ways to build trust. So some good ideas like strong training and a phased implementation. These are good ideas. In fact, the last unit we're going to get into more specifics about the right way to roll out AI. Another way to build trust is to start off with low risk back office uses. So something that's not visible to the customer, inventory tracking, forecasting. So these are safer starting points. Now those are more like ML kinds of applications, but you could have a service bot that's internal facing. So one student mentioned, so there's the Ask AT&T chatbot, where the customers, not customers, but the employees could use this as a question and answer tool. And so this became a safe way to kind of launch a chatbot that could then eventually get out to the customers. And right, because it is the case that customer-facing applications, they run a big risk of reputational risk. And especially larger companies, a lot depends on that reputation. And so if you have a really clunky chatbot that winds up saying things that really shouldn't be saying, there's a great deal of reputational risk in that. Okay, and then finally, just the overall broad lessons. So AI could actually strengthen culture if it's positioned as a support tool. So I see a lot of kind of professional and organizational definition happening in your comments. So you're saying, okay, well, here's where I draw the line, and here's what's important, and here's what I think that I need to keep doing. But if I can use this to free up these other tasks, then it could actually be a great opportunity to not just it's not a risk to culture. It can actually be a way of enhancing culture, improving culture, because it removes some of those other things. And then, of course, as always, a recurring theme is that governance is really important. Some of you work in high-risk areas, in military and government, where there are huge issues in terms of privacy. And so, of course, the guardrails that are there. Somebody mentioned a couple of security certifications where, okay, if you're going to have somebody using this new AI tool, then let's go back and see what these certifications that about data protection can we can ensure that people use the data in the correct way because they have these certifications. Okay, all right. We're going into the final week next week, so I encourage you, if you haven't already, to start on your projects, and please let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to reading them.